Welcome to the latest edition of the DLF Dynasty podcast. I am Dan Myler. With me, Matt Price and Ryan McDowell, as always. Guys, this week on the episode, we are going to finish up, put the final touches on our draft prospect primer series that we've been doing over the last month. This week, it's tight end, so we get to talk about one wide receiver in Kyle Pitts and then the rest of the tight ends as well. But before we get to all that, we're going to bring in Ryan and Matt. Matt, how's it going? We're inching closer to this draft. It's just right around the corner.
Yeah, we are. I'm super excited about it, and I'm super excited to hang out with you guys in person to watch the NFL draft. And I'm excited about at least one of these tight ends. You know, it's pretty well known that I don't really start watching film till late in the process. Like, I don't watch college football at all. So I've heard for ages and ages that Kyle Pitts is the man, and now I've seen it for myself. So I'm pretty excited about him.
Yeah, welcome to the party, Matt, because we've all been on that bandwagon for a while. I'm glad you joined up. He is so good, and we're going to get to that. I should also mention that since this tight end class, like most classes, is it's a relatively short list as to who is going to be dynasty relevant, at least in the short term. We are going to throw in our final pre-NFL draft rookie mock. And this time we're going to talk Superflex, and we're going to throw in tight end premium to add some value to these tight ends that we're going to talk about at least. Wish we could talk to a few of them. Ryan, we should bring you in as well. Just same thing as Matt. We're so close to the NFL draft. Don't have to look at the mocks anymore because, man, they're getting old.
Yeah, they are. Yes.
They're so much fun. They're so much fun early in the process, but late in the process, you can take it or leave it.
Well, it's just a tease, right?
Right.
This is what it might be like, but not really. I was wondering if we would talk about this, Matt. Let the cat out of the bag. We are getting together, the three of us, to watch the NFL draft. Tried to find a midpoint. I don't know if Matt would agree, coming way out from the West Coast, but we're going to meet up in St. Louis, the three of us, a few other folks as well, and just make a weekend of it. And I cannot wait. It's going to be a blast. And the draft is always a great thing, and it'll be even better this year, I think.
Yeah, the three of us and a couple other dynasty brains, guys that are really big into the NFL draft as well as the dynasty game. It's going to be a lot of fun, more fun than any draft I've ever watched on TV because I take it seriously. I'm sure you guys are the same way. Can't wait to watch it and see where all these guys go. But it's usually just me by myself in my basement watching it on TV.
Exactly. It's usually just me. Sometimes maybe I'll jump on a live stream or something for a minute, but usually it's just me watching and, whoever else is in the house, like, what are you doing? You're just watching people walk up to a podium and call names out. Why are you jumping up and down? Why are you so excited about this? But so it'll be nice to watch it with people that understand, Yeah,
like-minded fellas all getting together to do that. So hopefully we have some stories from that next week when we get together on the podcast. But first, we should talk about these tight ends and get into them. Before we get into each name in general, guys, Matt, for you, what are you looking for when you start scouting these tight ends? Because there's different kinds of guys, right? There's those inline blocking tight ends that leak out for passes and are a check down option. And then there's the exciting downfield options that we mostly care about. How do you balance it? What are you really looking for when you're checking out these tight ends?
Honestly, tight end is so hard to project. Everybody says this, but it's even more difficult, I think, than quarterback in some regard. So for me, like it seems like the most predictive thing for tight ends is athleticism. So that's number one. It's nice if they can block. We don't necessarily care about that for fantasy, right? But it does keep them on the field more often and, presumably present more opportunity. But it's really all about athleticism and production for me at the collegiate level. So that's really it. I don't really have a lot of nuance to this. Can they catch the ball well? Are they athletic? And are they used as a primary function of their offense?
Yeah, I like the guys that's a really good point. Primary part of the offense, although those that watch George Kittle play in college might say, hey, you missed on that one.
Yeah.
And that has happened time and time again with tight ends. But primary part of the offense, that's a big deal. I like guys who use their frame well. They can stack a defender and use their big body to shield them away from the football. Most of these guys are big athletic players. and they're going to have to make contested catches. So guys that do that regularly that leaves an impression on me, and we have a few of those guys in this class. Ryan, what about you? When it comes to this class as a whole, what are your thoughts as a guy that monitors ADP and is watching these guys come off the board both in startups and in rookie mock drafts? How do you see this class?
I see it like everyone else sees it. It's Kyle Pitts and everybody else, right? And then you just try to muddle through the second and third tier of tight ends to really determine if these guys are even worthy of roster spots. We know Kyle Pitts is going to be a coveted asset in every dynasty league, but in most of those leagues, unless you've got a multiple copy league going on, only one person is getting him. So you got to take some time to look at the rest of this class as well, and that's what we'll do. I do agree with Matt, and that's kind of something you hear from draft picks a lot over the years, is that the tight end position is the toughest one to scout. It's the toughest one for players to transition to from college, and I think a lot of that is because in past years they were asked to both catch the ball and block as well. And it seems like that's another change that we've seen recently in the NFL, that the tight ends that are like Kyle Pitts, like Evan Ingram, that if they basically are just a glorified wide receiver, in most cases their teams let them do that. So I do think that's a change that we've seen. And because of that, again, I agree with Matt. I'm just looking for the most athletic players I can find at the position.
Yeah, and if they get into one of those situations where the coaching staff lets them be themselves and work from the perimeter in the slot, move them around the formation, they have a better chance of being productive early in their career, which matters so much to us as dynasty managers. For so long, we've all said, man, at the tight end position, you got to wait 3, sometimes even 4 years for that production to start streaming in. That's slowly starting to change, although those Evan Ingram managers probably are saying maybe not. We're still waiting on that one. So let's get into this class, guys, because there is some talent, and it starts at the top with Kyle Pitts. He is at number 5 according to our ADP collected in April. That's rookie ADP that we collect. And Pitts, Matt, is like you brought it up in the intro. He's electrifying. He's fun. He's one of those. It's an overused term, but generational type talents. We watch him in college, and he's a man amongst boys, making catches in the red zone, in the end zone, with 3, 4, maybe even more defenders around him. And he just comes down with the ball, makes it look so easy, dynamic before and after the catch. He's going to be a fun pro to have on a dynasty roster.
Yeah, and I apologize. I can't remember who said it, but I saw on Twitter somebody said, even when he's not open, he's open. And that, he just is. The body control and flexibility shows like in the air and going up for a pass, high pointing passes, flexibility he shows for a man his size is just, it's ridiculous. The catch radius, like he just needs the ball basically in the same zip code as he is, and he has a chance to catch it, right? He's going to be a mismatch everywhere. As soon as he steps on the field, he's going to be the most athletic tight end in the league. He's too fast for linebackers, too big for safeties. Like, I just don't know how defenses are gonna stop him. I mean, are they gonna put a corner on him like sometimes they do with Kelsey? Like, imagine if he does end up going to Atlanta at 4. You're gonna have those corners on Julio and Calvin. Who's gonna guard Kyle Pitts? I just don't know.
Better have a coverage safety.
Right. So just some numbers here from one of my favorite numbers guys, Rich Rebar. Of all tight ends entering the draft since the year 2000, he is first in touchdowns per game, second in receiving yards per game, first in yards per catch amongst tight ends that caught at least 40 passes, 15th in receptions per game in his final season, second in receptions that went for touchdowns at 28% of it overall, all of his receptions. He's not going to be 21 until October, so super young. And he's Rich's highest graded prospect ever. So that's good enough for me. I'm happy to take him as high basically as you want to take him in any draft. I'm not going to argue with you taking him anywhere, except for maybe, I guess, 101 in a Superflex league.
Yeah, and we can get into that conversation a little bit here in a minute, because that's a worthy conversation to have, because he is ranked so high. Speaking of those rankings, Ryan, there are many out there that are saying he is the best player in this draft. He should be the top ranked player in single quarterback dynasty leagues even. So when you look at his ADP currently going 5th with an ADP of 5.4 in these rookie drafts, and seems like every time I look at even startup ADP, he's moving up that as well. A dynamic playmaker like this, how do we balance the upside with the value at this point? Because it feels like it could be teetering on getting out of control really quick.
It does. It does feel like that because, I mean, you look at startup ADP, he's basically in that tight end. He's basically the tight end 4 already and very close behind Darren Waller for that tight end 3 spot. I would expect, honestly, him to be the tight end 3, if not higher, post-draft, barring a horrible landing spot. And with him, I don't even know if landing spot matters, really. So we talked about it on the Locked On podcast last week with our DLF cohort, Scott Connor, and he said, and I totally agree, there's almost no way that Kyle Pitts is not the dynasty tight end 1 a year from now or even sooner, that he will overtake George Kittle and Travis Kelce in value. And kind of having that in mind, that's really where you have to draft him from that standpoint. And I think that's why he's going so highly in rookie drafts, going so highly in startup drafts as well. And I've been, I've kind of been one, I think, over the past couple months, throwing cold water on that a little bit, saying he's a mid-first rounder at best, only due to the position. And, if you want to take him second, trade that pick for Kittle instead. At this point, I've seen enough. Like, I think I would change my stance on that. And at DLF, we do not include rookies in our rankings until they're actually drafted. So we'll have those live for you on Thursday night and all weekend. And I think when he debuts in my tight end rankings, he'll be my tight end 1 already.
I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, there's no reason to think that if he's not number 1 right away, that he won't be really quickly. And anybody who does those kind of positional rankings, Pitts is, really, honestly, guys, he'd be the top wide receiver prospect in this class as well.
I've heard a lot of other people say that, and I definitely don't disagree. Of course, that's basically a comparison to Jamar Chase. And if that's the common thought process, then he should be the 101. I mean, Jamar Chase is my 101 in non-Superflex leagues. So if that's kind of where everybody is, then he should be the 101 in those single quarterback leagues.
And that was going to be my point, that if you truly feel like he'd be the top wide receiver or even second wide receiver in the class, then we should be talking about him as a top 3 pick in single quarterback leagues. The 4.44 40-yard dash and the 90th percentile at the tight end position, also a 129 broad jump. Oh my gosh, that is explosive. A guy that, whether, all you have to do is watch a few plays of him at Florida. You can even watch his best plays highlights or just some random catches, and you see how he pulls away from defenders. I mentioned he'd be that top wide receiver when he moved into the slot. And he is so explosive when he makes his break, especially on slants and in cuts, that he makes safeties and corners look bad. Then when you move him inside, he's got to take on a linebacker, and that's just silly. There isn't a linebacker in college football, let alone the NFL, or in the NFL, let alone college football, that can guard him one-on-one. So he has everything you look for: the incredible body control, all the speed, the timing to leap for a ball, and he tracks the ball so well deep down the field, especially in the red zone. Those are the kinds of things that we reserve for elite wide receivers. We talked about Randy Moss that way and Kelvin Johnson that way. That's not what we've ever said about any tight ends. And Kelce and really all those top tight ends, Waller especially, because he's super athletic. You shouldn't really say it, but he's on another level. He's almost on another plane when it comes to agility and being able to get in and out of breaks and making people look silly at the catch point. So I have no problem with anybody saying he's the best player coming into this NFL draft, or the best player, the top pick, the 101 in a dynasty rookie draft, especially in those one quarterback leagues.
This is the way I'm looking at it now. Look, I like Jamar Chase a lot. He's really, really good, but we get good receivers almost every single year. Maybe not quite to his prospect status, but last year was pretty good. We get pretty good running backs every year, but I would say that all of the running backs in this class don't really hold a candle to what we had last season. But how often does a tight end like this come along? So if you can we know how hard it is to fill the tight end position in Dynasty. If you don't have Kelsey or Kittle, or, some years it's Waller, some years, Mark Andrews is there. There's other ones that kind of jump up, ones that like Tanyan can get you there if he has an inordinate amount of touchdowns one year. But in general, there's not a whole lot of plug and play tight ends. And I think Kyle Pitts is going to be that. Even saying that we have to wait on tight end for a year, for production for a year, right? Like, is there any argument that Kyle Pitts is not going to finish as a top 10 or top 12 tight end in year one even? And if I can get tight end 12 production in year one, and then the rest of his career is tight, or even, not the rest of his career, maybe he eases into it slowly, but I'm going to have top 5 production at some point for a consistent basis. So if we knew that Travis Kelce was going to have 5 straight tight end 1 overall seasons, and I know that's very lofty expectations for Kyle Pitts, but if we knew that 5 years ago, you would say, absolutely, I'm taking Travis Kelce with the 1.01 in a rookie draft, and probably a first rounder in startup drafts, right? Because there's no bigger positional advantage that you have when you can get one of those guys. So I agree with you. I think I'm taking him even over Jamar Chase in a 1 quarterback league.
Well, Pitts he's clearly, he already is. He's going to be one of these envy players. Like, if he's on your roster, everybody else in the league wants him.
Yep.
And Trevor Lawrence is going to be that way as well. Saquon Barkley was that way a few years ago. So there's value, even if you have doubts about the player, I don't think anybody does, but even if you have doubts about taking a tight end that highly, just that idea alone should be enough to boost his value for everyone, knowing the second you get him on your roster, you're going to be getting trade offers for him. You're going to be driving that market.
Yeah, you mentioned flaws or don't like the player. He's one of those guys where you're really nitpick. I was listening to a podcast this week, and they were talking about how he doesn't use fakes and jukes and stuff at the top of his route. And I just kept saying to my radio, he doesn't have to. He's too fast, and they don't know where he's going. And we could talk about Kyle Pitts all day long because he is that good, and he's going to be so much fun. Hey, guys, in a Superflex league, or excuse me, in a tight end premium league, just 1 quarterback, because we'll talk about the Superflex aspect of it. 1 quarterback, tight end premium. Where does he fit, Ryan? Where is he in your rankings there?
It would depend on the scoring. I know you said tight end premium. To me, 1.5. PPR.
Yeah, so we're talking more like a 2-point type of league rather than the 1.5. That doesn't create enough gap, probably.
Right. I agree. So yeah, if it's either a start 2 tight end mandatory, or even that 1.75 or 2 PPR, if it's 1 quarterback, I think he has to be the 101.
Yeah, if it's 2 tight ends, he's got to be the 101.
He's the 101.
Gosh, I can't believe we're saying
I need a cold shower, you guys. I need a cold shower.
He's so good. All right, let's talk about the rest of this class, because although there's not another Kyle Pitts, there is the potential for playmakers and guys that can help our dynasty roster. We've all struggled for years if you're kind of in tight end purgatory if you don't have one of those top few guys. Maybe there's not another guy that could jump into that top echelon, that top 3 or 4 tight end group. But there are certainly guys with the potential to be top 12 tight ends and guys that we can count on, maybe not always on a week-to-week basis, but from time to time. And I think that starts with tight end Pat Freiermuth from Penn State, a fun prospect for sure to watch, makes so many highlight reel catches, guys. If turn on the film at Penn State there, and he'll make one-handers. He'll do them across the sideline on deep crosses and stuff like that. And that's exciting. And then he'll throw in a really, really bad drop across the middle where nobody's around him. I like to think of him as an inline seam stretcher. So maybe a throwback seam stretcher, a guy that lines up in line and then gets to that second level beyond the tight end in front of the safety and makes plays down the field. But he can play in the slot. He has that kind of quickness, finds the ball quickly on 3rd and short. That's a cool little niche to his game that he can do, and I find intriguing for sure. He's got a devastating stiff arm after the catch. Struggled against physical linebackers at the line of scrimmage. Like I mentioned, the bad drops from time to time, Matt. Freiermuth is widely seen as the number 2 tight end in this class, especially among Dynasty managers and guys that rank in Dynasty. He currently comes in at number 2 in our rookie ADP at 26 with a 24.5 ADP. What are your thoughts on Freiermuth and his upside in Dynasty?
He's 2A, 2B with me, with another guy we'll talk about. And he has this nickname of Baby Gronk. I guess you could see it stylistically, I guess, but I don't really necessarily see that as an outcome for his career. To me, I get kind of like maybe slightly athletic TJ Hawkinson vibes from him. So I think he's going to be a really good NFL player, but he's such a good blocker. I'm not sure that he's going to necessarily have the fantasy upside unless he lands somewhere that really wants him to be a receiver. You mentioned his quickness and acceleration. Like for me, I just feel like sometimes it's not really there. Like if he doesn't get hit in stride, he definitely has build up speed. But what I saw was sometimes if he doesn't get hit in stride, if he has to catch the ball and then turn around and go, sometimes it looks like he's running in sand a little bit. Like it takes him a little while to get up to that speed that he does have if he has a runway, right? I saw him get stood up by linebackers several times. The yak question marks are what has me a little bit below one other guy. But I mean, he's going to be a good tight end. Especially in a tight end premium league, like if you pass on Pitts, you pick him up in the middle of the second round, I think you're probably going to be pretty happy with that. I think you're going to have to wait longer than you will for Pitts to have true production out of him. But yeah, I think he's going to be pretty landing spot dependent just in terms of his fantasy upside.
Ryan, what do you think about Freiermuth?
Yeah, I like Freiermuth as well. I think he's actually being undervalued in that early 3rd round range. Matt mentioned more as a mid-second rounder in Dynasty rookie drafts. That's where I see him. And of course, we'll see what the NFL draft tells us about Freiermuth and everyone else. But Matt, one of those numbers I know you like to point to with tight ends is just can they be a top 2 option on their team?
Yeah.
We saw that with Freiermuth. With Penn State last year, he had 28% of the targets, a huge target share for the tight end position. And basically that offense ran through him. And obviously that's not a direct transition to the NFL and NFL offenses, but I do think it's a good sign.
A good sign, no doubt. And a guy that works all 3 levels of the defense. They move him around the formation, especially in his final year with the Nittany Lions. Like I said, when we brought him up, he's an exciting player to watch. That one-handed catch along the sideline, I can't remember who it was against, but I've watched that play so many times because tight ends usually don't make those kind of plays. So he's one of those guys that has a lot of upside. I think he belongs in the middle of the second round in single quarterback leagues as well. Currently have him ranked 20 overall in this rookie class. How about the next guy on the list, fellas? Because there's one guy right behind him in ADP. I mentioned Freiermuth at 26. It's Brevin Jordan out of Miami at 27 with an ADP of 28.7. Jordan has, he's really had the eye, Ryan, of a lot of us that play the Devy game because he is an athletic guy. Certainly can play out of the slot, so he gets a lot of attention maybe that way. But there are things that I see Brevin Jordan do when I watch him on film. He's not necessarily a downfield threat for all that athleticism that he's supposed to have. Most of his production came on short crosses and quick outs, things of those nature. That could be offense related. We didn't see him stretching the field a lot. I think that's a big red flag when it comes to a long-term developmental type tight end, and having to draft him at the end of the second or early in the 3rd round, especially in this draft class, I feel like that's overrating him. I don't have Jordan in my top 3. I think there are a lot better options.
Yeah, I would agree with most of that. I think Jordan really got by with his athleticism at Miami. He was able to catch those short passes, as you mentioned, break some tackles. He was 4th in college football among tight ends with missed tackles forced at 9. Tied for 6th with yards after the catch per reception. Over 9 of those, over 9 yards after the catch. So I don't know if he's going to be able to do that in the NFL. He's fast for college level, but he didn't necessarily impress with his testing. A little bit shorter than we'd like to see. I'm with you. Jordan is not my tight end 3 as he is according to our ADP.
Yeah, we disagree here. I see him as like I said, 2A, 2B with Freiermuth, and depending on landing spot where they go, where they're going to fit into the pecking order with whatever offense they land on, is probably going to make the separation for me. And I would take him, around the same range as Freiermuth, maybe a little bit later if he has a worse landing spot. But athletically, I think he's the second, maybe third, based on another guy we'll talk about later, but second or third most athletic tight end in this draft. You mentioned his testing numbers, 4.69, mid 4.7s, I think, on one 40-yard dash run. But on film, it seems like he plays faster than that to me. So I feel like his game speed is faster than his testing numbers. You mentioned, Dan, a lot of his receptions did come out of the backfield in the flats just to kind of get the ball in his hands. And I think that's because he's so good at that part of the game. I think I don't want to say special, but I think he's very good with the ball in his hands, and his yards after the catch are going to be, I think, way higher than Freiermuth in the NFL. I think acceleration is his best trait. I think he just explodes off the line. I think you regularly see him run by guys. There was a touchdown against North Carolina where he beat his man right off of the line, had to slow down a little bit to make the catch, gave him a stiff arm, and then took it 76 yards for the touchdown. For the negatives, I think he is a little bit undersized. And for catching the ball, especially, this is one thing I really don't like about him, is that especially on contested catches, he does have a tendency to just let the ball come into his body, and kind of seems like he's bracing for that hit instead of like focusing on making the catch out and away from his body. So that is a concern, but athletically speaking, if we're going to rate that as important for tight ends, I think he's right up there with everybody except for Pitts.
The next guy after Jordan, it seems to separate as far as our ADP goes, because Ryan, we do 4-round rookie mocks, and there are a handful of other guys that got picked in 1 or 2 of those mocks in April. Let's lump these guys together. There's Hunter Long from Boston College and Kenny Yeboah from Ole Miss, then Tommy Tremble from Notre Dame. All these guys got picked somewhere in the top 48 in 1 or more of those rookie mock drafts. So Ryan, if there's a guy in this group that jumps out to you, somebody that makes sense, if you're in one of these tight end premium leagues and want a developmental guy, somebody that's going to go on day 2 or even early in day 3 of the NFL draft, who's the guy for you?
I think my head says it's Tommy Tremble. I think he's certainly a day 2 pick. He's a lock to be a day 2 pick, I think. And we were talking a little bit before the show, Dan. I think it sounds like you would agree with that. And maybe he's even the tight end 3 in this class, according to the NFL draft. And then perhaps afterwards, according to ADP as well. I think we can see a shift there. I do really like Kenny Yeboah as well, but I don't have the confidence that he's going to get the draft capital that we need. But I do love the athleticism we've seen from him.
Yeah, an athletic freak, a guy that can get all over the field and has flashed good hands in the past. Yeboah is raw but has upside. Matt, if there's somebody for you, who would you highlight?
I do think it's Tremble, but just to be a little bit different, I'll talk about Hunter Long because I think he's maybe the safest option of this next group. Some have comped him to Kyle Rudolph, and I could see that. He does everything you really want to see from kind of from a tight end in college. He blocks well. He seems to catch pretty well, and he was the primary option for his team in 2020. He had 22% of Boston College's receiving yards, 24% of their 22% of the targets, 24% of the receiving yards. But he's not really super strong at the catch point on contested catches, even worse than Jordan, I think, in that regard. But for an NFL team, just looking for a tight end that's going to be pretty good and can do everything okay, I think he would be the safest option there. Tommy Tremble, just real quick, my notes on him is that why wasn't he used enough? That was my first thing, was why wasn't he used as much as he was? He does seem to have natural athleticism and pass catching skills. And then I went and looked, and he was behind Cole Kmet last year, right, in 2019. And then this year, just looked at for the first time, he was kind of overshadowed by the freshman Michael Mayer, who I'm sure we're going to be talking about in a couple of years, right? So he has the bloodline too. His dad was actually an all SEC safety at Georgia, and he played one uneventful year in the NFL. So he does seem to have a lot going for him, and he seems to be a guy who is he has got kind of untapped potential, I would say. So he could be a lot more in the NFL than he could be in college.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, Matt. Could be way better in college, have a way better college or pro career than he did in college. Really another blocking tight end, and was overshadowed by the more athletic tight end on the team that was running a lot of the routes both of the last 2 years, the guys that you mentioned, but he has all that pass catching upside, is very athletic himself, 86th percentile in the 40-yard dash at 4.6. Also had a 37-inch vertical, which shows up on film from time to time, 85th percentile there, and a great broad jump that put him in the 87th percentile as well. So showed off that athleticism at his pro day. On top of it, he is 100% effort, 100% of the plays. He is a workhorse for sure. Creates space with those head fakes and those jukes that somebody was picking on Kyle Pitts about. He's above average after the catch, I would say, because of that speed, and he has that red zone potential because of that leaping ability for sure. Had too many drops and doesn't look smooth when even when he makes the catch. He does those alligator arm double catch type situations far too often, and that'll have to be something that he cleans up. Hopefully he doesn't get typecast into the inline blocking role, which may happen. I think Tommy Tremble is going to be either the second or the third tight end drafted in the NFL draft, and he should be at least the third tight end taken in rookie drafts because he is raw and he has a lot of upside. So that pretty much covers the guys that really matter to us as dynasty managers, fellas. Is there anything else worth mentioning when it comes to the tight end position before we get to our Superflex tight end premium rookie mock draft? Is there anything else you want to throw in there, Matt?
I don't think so. I mean, I have a little bit of notes on Eboa, so I can just throw it out there.
Okay.
I saw straight line speed, vertical threat with big catch radius, and it attacks the ball in the air well. But he doesn't really show anything in terms of route running or lateral movement ability. So like Tremble, though, maybe some untapped potential there. So it just needs a draft capital, like Ryan said.
Yeah, and after the six that we've talked about, Pitts, Freiermuth, Jordan, Hunter Long, Yeboah, and Tremble, there is one other guy worth quickly touching on. It's Noah Gray out of Duke, another athlete that's really, really raw and might have a little bit of long-term upside. I guess in the deepest of tight end premium leagues, maybe he's worthy of taking a look at and watching where he lands in the NFL draft. Fellas, let's head on over to this rookie mock draft. We didn't do quite enough of these this year leading up to the draft. We had a lot of things to cover, and we wanted to be a little bit more in-depth with the players that we talked about. So I haven't done enough of them. We got plenty of time to do more, though, of course, after the NFL draft. Some initial thoughts, though, Ryan, going into a Superflex, tight end premium rookie draft, what are the things that are on your mind?
I mean, kind of going back to Kyle Pitts, where Kyle Pitts fits in with the quarterbacks, and can Jamar Chase and the top running backs, can they claim a top 2, 3, maybe even a top 5 position? I mean, it's not going to be crazy in Superflex tight end premium leagues to see Pitts and 4 quarterbacks potentially go as the top 5 players. I think that's going to happen in some of these.
And anything for you that's on your mind coming into these drafts, whether you're a rebuild or a perennial contender, what are you thinking about?
Yeah, it's the quarterbacks and it's Pitts for me, and it depends on your team and where it's at, depending on which way you go with that. Outside of the 101, Lawrence is locked in there. After that, I think if we see Fields lands in San Francisco or Lance, whichever one, then he's probably going to be locked in as the 102, whichever one happens there. And then after that, I think all bets are off. I think Pitts is maybe even the next guy after those top two. If one of those guys, Fields or Lance, ends up in a place where he's not going to start right away, then maybe you even make a case that Pitts is ahead of them. So that's where my head's at with this.
I'm really interested to see how this kind of falls into place. We're going to try to get as many picks as we can. We might as well kick it off right now. The randomized draft order goes Ryan, then Matt, then myself. So Ryan, who's the 101?
Yeah, this one's pretty easy. I'm going with Trevor Lawrence, the quarterback of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Obviously, going to be the top pick in the NFL draft. And really already like the weapons that they've lined up there for him.
So Lawrence goes number 1 overall, and then that puts Matt on the board.
Yeah, I'll take just based, since we don't know landing spots, I'll take Trey Lance here. He's my quarterback 2, 2A, 2B with Fields, and landing spot's going to be really important in determining that. But Lance is the guy for me right now.
Yeah, I would have gone with Trey Lance at number 3 had he gotten to me. I have them back-to-back in my rankings in my overall with Lance and Fields. So since Fields is the one that gets through, I'll go with Justin Fields at the 103. Ryan, that puts you on the clock at 104.
Yeah, I think this is where things turn a little bit for me. I certainly see a gap between Lance and Fields and Zach Wilson, who is my quarterback 4. So I'm going to go with the guy we spent so much time on tonight. I'll take Kyle Pitts.
I hate you so much. I hate you so much. I thought for sure you've been talking about Jamar Chase 101 for weeks now. I thought I could take that second spot and get Pitts here, but clearly that's not the case. So I'll do that. I'll go ahead and take Jamar Chase here at 5 as the top receiver on the board.
This is an interesting situation because we're 4 picks in, going on number 5, fellas, and we haven't seen one of these running backs. How likely do you think, Ryan, is it that this could be really how things play out? I know we don't know landing spots at this point, but a lot of us play in these Superflex tight end premium leagues and did not see a running back go off in the top 4 picks. Now the top 5 picks, that's interesting at the very least.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a possibility. As I said earlier, we do have some nice landing spots. Of course, Pittsburgh has been a hot topic as far as maybe using their first rounder on a running back. I don't think that would be a good choice for them. And honestly, I wouldn't be chasing that running back, whoever that might be, if it's Najee Harris or Travis Etienne. I wouldn't be chasing that player as much as really any of the 5 that have been drafted so far. So I think we're going to see quite a few drafts like this play out.
Matt, any surprises for you to this point?
No, I think in most drafts you will see Najee Harris in the top 5 at least, but I'm sure you'll see plenty like this where it doesn't. I think probably the outlier for us in this particular mock is that Wilson wasn't in the top 5. But I think we're all 3 on record as being a little lower on him than the rest of the quarterbacks.
Yeah, I'm a little lower on him, but even with that said, there is a lot of talent there. It may be a little raw, but there's a reason he's going to go in the top 3 picks in the NFL draft, and it's not just because he's a quarterback. He put a lot of things on film that look good. So I think the way this falls, it feels to me like you could go with a positional player if you wanted to, but I'm gonna go with Zach Wilson here at number 6. It feels like in a lot of drafts, you're going to see those top 4 quarterbacks go in the top 6 or 7 picks. I feel like he can go right here.
I just don't want to draft players from the Jets until I see that they're not the old Jets anymore.
I totally understand that.
Yeah, I understand that as well. I think I will break the running back seal here at the 7th pick. I do have Travis Etienne as my RB1 currently, so I'll take him.
Just sniping me all over the place, Ryan.
I love
fine.
it.
It's fine. Yeah, I'll take Najee Harris here. Probably the first running back in the NFL draft. This is totally tangential, but imagine if Atlanta takes Pitts at 4, and then at the top of the second they come away with ETN. Like that would give me all the Atlanta shares.
They would give up 70 points a game. They've got to address defense.
I know.
They've got to address defense.
But maybe they'll score 70 points a game.
How about if the Jets take him though at the top of 2? Because you just went on record saying you can't handle a Jet on your roster.
I'm out.
That puts me on the clock at the 109, and I've been on record saying my second wide receiver is not the same as everybody else's. I'm going to dip my toe in those Alabama receivers, but I'm going with Jalen Waddle. I think he's going to be picked in the top 8 picks in the NFL draft, and I love his upside, so I'll take Waddle.
I think this is kind of where it gets interesting. Actually, probably that 9 pick is where it gets interesting. But you could certainly go a lot of different directions. I think I think I'll take Javonte Williams here.
Yep.
Nearly went with a quarterback. We see teardrops after this RB3, after the quarterback 5. So could definitely make a case to go either way. I'll take Javonte Williams.
So Williams goes at number 10. That puts Matt on the clock at 11 overall.
Yeah, I think the player that I want to take here will be available, hopefully, at my next pick, unless Ryan has something to say about it. So I will take the last quarterback here that we're probably going to care about, at least early on in their NFL careers. I'll take Mac Jones here.
All right, that leaves me with the final pick of the first round. I think I'm going to go back to the wide receiver position. It's a tough decision, really. I got these guys back to back in my rankings, and maybe this is one of those situations where I have to change my. No, I'll stick with the Alabama receivers. I'm going to take Devonta Smith. He's my third wide receiver. So that wraps up round 1. Ryan led it off with Trevor Lawrence. That was followed up with Trey Lance and Justin Fields to finish up the top 3. After that, at 104, went Kyle Pitts, then Jamar Chase and Zach Wilson. Travis Etienne was number 7 in our rookie mock draft. Then Najee Harris, Jalen Waddle, Javonte Williams, Mac Jones, and Devonta Smith was the final pick. Ryan, let's get off to a running start here in round 2.
Yeah, I am. We see the quarterback position and the running back position both kind of dried up. Even with the tight end premium, I'm not looking there. So I think we're going to see probably a run at wide receiver. I'm going to go with. I think this is a ranking change situation as well. Maybe I think I'm going to go with Rashad Bateman.
All right, Bateman's the next wide receiver that I had on my board. I was kind of going back and forth between Bateman and Smith. Glad to see he goes off at number 13. Matt, who's the 202?
I'm glad to see those picks went exactly as predicted so that I can get my guy, Rondale Moore, here at the 202.
Yeah, nice value there for those of us that really like Moore and his upside. I think it still depends on that landing spot. So we'll see where we land with Moore come next week. I'm going to go with the other Moore in this class. I'll take Elijah with the 203. I think there's a chance that he could go in the first round, just like Rondale Moore has a chance as well. If he finds that landing spot at the end of the first round, he could be a guy that's moving up draft boards by this time next week. Ryan, how about you at the 204?
This is an easy one for me. I see another teardrop after this player, so I'll go with Terrace Marshall, the LSU wide receiver.
Ryan, I have noticed that you're right at the end of these tiers each time, so things are working out your way.
Really are.
Who chose the draft order, guys? I can't remember.
We don't have to share that, Matt. Who's up at 205?
I think I'm probably reaching a little bit here by some people's standards, but I'm going to take my next wide receiver as Diami Brown from North Carolina.
Oh, sweet. I thought you were going to snipe me there.
Go ahead and take Tony. I don't want him. You can have him.
I thought you were going to go totally off script, a very not Matt Price type pick, and take Tony there. I have Tony right behind Bateman and Elijah Moore. So right there at my wide receiver 6, I'm going to take Kadarius Toney. And when he falls to one of those teams at the end of the first round, there'll be another one that's moving up draft boards. Ryan, you are up to lead off the second half of round 2.
I will, with the tight end premium in mind, I'll move over to that position and take Pat Freiermuth.
He was the next guy on my list. Could totally see him going a couple picks higher if things shake out well. Matt, you're up at 208.
Yeah, I feel like the next group of wide receivers here are pretty, I think I could throw them all in the bucket and pull a name out of the hat and be okay with it. So I'm going to go back to running back, and I'll take Trey Sermon here.
Okay, I was wondering when somebody would go back to the running backs. Another guy that has a chance, if draft capital goes his way, to be a mover as far as dynasty value goes. I'm up at 209, and I'm going to stick with the wide receivers because I have them just over the running back that is left, or the running backs, I guess, that are left. It's Tylan Wallace out of Oklahoma State. I'll take him here at 209. Ryan, who's your last pick of the second round?
Yeah, you got me on that one. I was definitely hoping for Wallace with that pick. Instead, I will go with I feel like it should be a running back, but I just don't have confidence in any of these guys on the board. I think I'll take a stab at the quarterback position. We've heard some talk that Kellen Mond could even be a late first rounder. I'm not believing that, but he will likely be a second round pick. Kind of a developmental guy, but a landing spot could help him to earn this type of value.
Yeah, he's certainly worth starting to think about right around this range. I started thinking, hey, who's the next quarterback after Freiermuth went off the board, and started looking at those names and thought, man, comparing them against a couple of these wide receivers and then maybe even a couple of these running backs, it felt like maybe he could slip into the third round. It'll be interesting where he goes in the NFL draft and how that really affects his dynasty value going into draft season, because he's a guy that playing that senior season and playing so well, it certainly looks like the arrow is pointing up for him. Matt, you're up at the 11th pick in the second round.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with running back, and I will take Kenneth Gainwell here.
Okay, so that leaves the last real running back that I'm interested in this range, and that's Michael Carter out of UNC. I'll take him at the 212. So that wraps up the second round. We definitely have time for a third round, so we might as well do that. Before we do, though, guys, let's recap that second round. Ryan started it off with Rashad Bateman. Then Matt went with his guy, Rondale Moore. I took Elijah Moore at the 203. After that, it went Terrace Marshall, then Diami Brown, Kadarius Toney, and Pat Freiermuth. After that, at the 208, it was Trey Sermon, and then Tylan Wallace, Kellen Mond. At the 211 went Kenneth Gainwell, and then finally at the 212, Michael Carter. Ryan, you're up. Let's get this third round in.
Let's do it. Back to the wide receiver position. Amon-Ra St. Brown is my pick. Definitely a day 2 pick, and again, going to be landing spot dependent.
As a lot of these third round guys will be, for sure. Yes. St. Brown is a guy that you see in some people's rankings all the way up in the top, like wide receiver 8, and then you see him all the way down at wide receiver 12 or 13 or 14 for some others. Matt, who do we got at the 302?
It's a toss-up here. I think both guys I could have at my next pick, so I'll just flip a coin here. I'm going to take the running back, who I think after Sermon is probably the next guy that could potentially be a 3-down back if he, landed in the right situation, there was an injury or whatever. Somebody, I don't know. So there's some situation where I think he could be a 3-down back as a fill-in or whatever, and that's Khalil Herbert.
All right, I listened to that whole thing, and I wasn't sure what name you were going to say.
That is not who I thought you were taking.
That was not who I thought you were taking either. I thought you were going to take Chuba Hubbard. No. I think I'll take him at the 303.
Hard pass.
That's who I thought you were going to take as well, and I was hoping one of you would. I think I'll stick with the wide receiver position. I can't give up on Seth Williams yet.
Oh, maybe you should, Ryan.
I know.
You can't make fun of Chuba and then take Seth Williams. That's not okay.
Yeah.
Matt, you have the 305.
At least he's got size. Yeah, I know neither of you guys are going to take him, but I'll go ahead and take him here. I'll take Brevin Jordan.
Right around the range that he becomes a value, though, according to ADP for sure. Maybe even a little later than what's expected. I'm up at 306, and this is probably a guy that you guys weren't considering, but he might be one of my favorite third-round picks. Probably real. I have him ranked higher than Chuba Hubbard, so I should have taken him at the 303. I'm going to take Nico Collins out of Michigan.
Speaking of size.
No doubt. Ryan, 307.
I am going to. I think I'll take Elijah Mitchell. It seems like everybody, including our buddy Ray Garvin, is calling him the next James Robinson. I don't know if there's going to be another James Robinson. Certainly not going to be one every year, but I do. I like what Mitchell can bring, and I think at worst case he's got a decent chance of making a roster.
Yeah, he's picking up some steam for sure in this league or this week leading up to the NFL draft. We'll see how that plays out on draft night. Matt, you're at 308.
I'll go with another running back that I seem to be higher on than everybody else, and that's Kylan Hill. I just think he's a fantastic receiver. Whether or not he gets ever an opportunity to be a 3-down back, I think he has the size to do it, but his receiving ability puts him over the top for me.
We're to the point now where you're kind of taking the flavor of choice, I guess, towards the end of the third round in a Superflex league, and in tight end premium, you have to start considering that as well. I'm going to take another one of the quarterbacks and just hope you hit on something special. I'll take Davis Mills, has some upside, so he fits at the 309. Ryan, who do you have at 310?
That was my hesitation when I took Mitchell. It was between Mills and Mitchell, and I thought Mills might fall one more set of picks. So after he's gone, I'll avoid the quarterback position, and I will go with Tommy Tremble back to that tight end position.
Well, you got me right back. So
all right.
I would have gone with Tremble for sure with the final pick at the 312 had I had the chance. So you got me back. Matt, who's your last pick of this draft?
I'm going to go deeper. That someone I don't even think we've talked about on this show, but someone that Waldman has turned me on to recently, and that is Frank Darby. It'll be like the third straight NFL draft that a Sun Devil has been drafted. Deep ball receiver, averaged over 20 yards per catch over his first 3 seasons. So, at the end of the third round, I'll take a shot at him.
Yeah, that's a fun one for sure.
We'll see if he gets drafted.
That's fair.
I'm going to take a little slot receiver that I think has a little bit of upside and could get drafted higher than some expect. It'd be nice if he got drafted in round 3 and goes on day 2. That's Amari Rodgers out of Clemson. Has a little bit of upside as a PPR type wideout. So the third round goes Amon-Ra St. Brown at the 301 to Ryan, followed up by Khalil Herbert to Matt, and Chuba Hubbard to myself. After that, Ryan took Seth Williams. Then Matt took Brevin Jordan, and I got Nico Collins. The second half of the third round went Elijah Mitchell, Kylan Hill, Davis Mills, Tommy Tremble, Frank Darby, and Amari Rodgers. Fellas, we got 36 picks in. Is there anybody left on your list, Matt, worthy of mentioning before the NFL draft?
I'm still kind of interested in Dwayne Eskridge because of what he did at the offseason. I can't remember if it was the Senior Bowl or the whatever the other one is called these days. Javian Hawkins is a little bit interesting as a receiving running back. I don't know. I'm sure there's a bunch more quarterbacks we could talk about. Kyle Trask. I don't think we talked about him really. Jalen Darden. What about him as a Packers slot receiver, Dan? I don't mind that. There's a whole handful. Guy. Yeah, small school guy, but I think really athletic, and again would fill that. If they don't get Rondale Moore, when my hopes and dreams are crushed, then I wouldn't mind Jalen Darden as kind of a later round guy that could fill a similar role.
Yeah, that's those are some good names for sure. Another small school guy from my neck of the woods is Cade Johnson from South Dakota State. Yeah. He's a guy to monitor on the third day, most likely, of the NFL draft. Ryan, anybody for you?
Yeah, the Stanford wide receiver. I was hoping one of you would take him, so I didn't have to attempt the name, but Simi Fehoko, I believe. Hope I didn't butcher that. I've seen him showing up in some second round. Speaking in the second round. So
speaking of Packers type guys, tall and fast, lanky, long arms. That's Fehoko. So he's a guy to monitor as well, fellas. We got just a couple minutes here, so I'm going to put you on the spot real quick. Landing, Matt, you can't say Rondale Moore going to the Packers. Landing spot, player, skill, perfect match. Any round, really. Is there a perfect match out there? Maybe something that's not always talked about?
I mentioned it earlier, but I really want to see Kyle Pitts go to Atlanta. I just think it's okay. If they decide that they are going to ride with what they have instead of going for the quarterback and planning for the future, like that, I think that would put that offense, over the top. They have a little bit of an issue at running back, depending on how you feel about Mike Davis, and obviously the defense is not great, but the defense not being great is pretty good for an offense that could be incredible if they were to go with Pitts.
Ryan, is there something for you, a perfect marriage that would end in dynasty perfection, I guess?
Yeah, I think both the running backs feel like they have ideal landing spots. For me, it's Travis Etienne in Atlanta. I think that's the one that Matt mentioned earlier, and Najee Harris in Pittsburgh. I don't think either one of those end up happening because of team need. But that would be the perfect marriage.
Man, I would be shocked if Pittsburgh took a running back in round one. More than likely, they'd have to take him in round one if they were going to get him. I've mentioned it before. It's Trey Lance in San Francisco. That's the one I want to see, a perfect marriage of coach and scheme and quarterback and upside and all the stuff that we care about. There are so many, we talked about these things. You mentioned Pitts. Ryan, you talked about the running backs. I talked about a quarterback. And then there's all these wide receivers and so many teams that need wide receiver help and could use them immediately, most likely as Justin Jefferson did in Minnesota last year. And as we've seen so many times otherwise, a wide receiver is going to be the one that jumps off and takes off in their career early and creates that big stir in the dynasty community. So there's a lot of those type of guys, everybody that we talked about today for sure, including Waddle and Devonta and Bateman and both Moores and Marshall and Chase and the rest of them. So a lot of things are going to be ironed out here in the next few days, but we're still going to get stuff wrong. So luckily next week we get to try to figure it all out. Hopefully we get to fit in another one of these mock drafts, knowing all these landing spots and things like that. Ryan, Matt, and myself are going to get together and watch the draft. I hope all of you are doing the same safely with your friends, having a good time watching the draft, and thinking about these dynasty values like we will be. For Ryan and Matt, I'm Dan. Thanks for listening to this episode of the DLF Dynasty Podcast. We'll catch you again next week.